is being streamed live on the Council's website channel, and the link is provided on the Council's website. Please note that any comments posted on the chat feed of the Council's YouTube channel during the recording of this meeting will not be monitored by the Council. All mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so that meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. Please switch your profile to mute unless you are speaking. The procedure for each item: the planning officer will present the report and the committee will be asked for any points of clarification. The planning officer will read out any written statements received from members of the public on any particular item. The meeting will be adjourned to enable those who have given notice that they wish to address the committee on any particular application in order to do so. Each person will be invited to join the meeting via Zoom and will have 3 minutes to give their views. Once all comments have been given, the meeting will be reconvened for members of the committee to discuss the application. Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence?
There are no apologies for absence.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. With that, we'll proceed to item agenda 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Have we got the slides being shared? Right. We can go to the, let's say, yeah. This item relates to the Long Riding pub, or former Long Riding public house site in Long Riding, Basildon, and a proposal for the erection of a 4-storey block containing 20 flats and associated car parking. If we go to the next slide. This shows the location. It's a regular shaped site on the south side of the road, immediately to the west of its junction with Claiborne Circle. The adjoining area is predominantly residential. Along Long Riding itself, it's 3-storey properties, flats on the corners of roads with terraced 3-storey houses joining these flats. The site itself is a part single, part 3-storey block attached to a small parade of containing 2 retail units. To the south, you've got mainly houses, 2-storey houses, with immediately to the south a pair of semi-detached bungalows. If we go to the next slide, these are just some views of the site itself. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen. So it's single-storey, probably late 1950s buildings, with a 3-storey block attached with residential accommodation to the upper floors. The picture on the right is just a different view of the site itself. Go to the next slide. This is the rear of the site. It's got a service yard, and there's a footpath alleyway between the site itself and the adjoining retail units and flats to the upper levels. Next slide. These are properties to the north of the site. These are the 3-storey flats and terraced houses that I mentioned earlier. Go to the next slide. It should show the houses and the bungalow immediately to the south of the site. If we go to the next slide, this should say, yeah, this is the proposal itself. As I say, the proposal is for a 3-storey building containing 20 flats. The left-hand side shows the ground floor. You've got 4 flats on the floor, with the entrance on the north side of the building, fronting Long Riding itself. On the ground floor, you'd have the 4 flats with a cycle store and a refuse store in the southeast corner, with a new access from Claiborne Circle leading to a ramp that leads down to the basement parking that I mentioned earlier. To the south of the site, you'd have an amenity area. Also, you get the amenity area with the trees that run along the south side of the site itself, retained as part of the overall scheme. So on the right hand side, you've got the first floor, which is similar to the second floor. You've got 6 units there, with each of the properties having their balconies to the north or south of the building itself. Let's go to the next slide. The third floor would be setting slightly off the eaves of the building. There's 4 flats there. They'll have small, like a terrace area for their amenity space. And the right hand side just shows you the basement itself, ramp down to it, and the 17 spaces on the lower part of the development. And a majority, or large majority, will have electric charging points. Go to the next slide. These show the elevations of the building itself. It's a kind of contemporary design. It'll have a grey kind of framework to the structure with glazed elements to north and south sides of the building. Projecting balconies. These will be finished in a kind of contrasting gold, golden glazed elements to the balconies themselves. Whilst the top floor, let's say, set back, and we'd be finished in a zinc cladding. If you go to the next slide, that should be just a kind of visual of what it could look like if built. Let's say it's a kind of contemporary design, but its height is not too dissimilar to those adjoining the site itself. Go to the next slide. Oh, what's happened there? Page. Oh, right. Someone's changed it. Right. It should. Yeah. If we go to the principles of the scheme itself. Got the structure there. Let's say the site. There's a number of issues that look at as part of the scheme. That's the principle was the redevelopment of the site, its design, layout, impact on neighbours, highway and parking issues, as well as kind of social infrastructure for rural housing and the like. In terms of the principle, say the site's in a residential area, whilst it's being used for a community use at the moment, there are no site-specific policies preventing its redevelopment, and a residential scheme of this type could be acceptable in principle and wouldn't look out of character in that respect. The NPPS also put forward a presumption in favour of sustainable development, particularly in housing applications where there's a undersupply of housing, which is currently the case in the borough. So therefore, it felt the principle could be accepted in the site. In terms of the design, so it is a contemporary design, but as you've seen from the photographs, the surrounding areas are, say, flat roof, 3-storey structures, quite large in themselves. Whilst the proposal will have some elements that differ from the adjoining properties, it is a sort of a high quality, would add to the area, and is not felt to look out of character in this instance. The building, or the units themselves, will have a good amenity space in terms of their balcony areas. The garden amenity area at the rear of the site would provide 220 square meters of amenity space, meeting our relevant requirements. The actual units themselves would all exceed the nationally described space standards and provide good accommodation for the proposed occupiers. In terms of the impact on neighbours, the closest properties are those to the, or property is that to the east, above the shop unit, and the buildings has been designed to ensure that it doesn't infringe on the 45-degree line taken from the closest windows on the rear and front of the adjoining units, ensuring it doesn't result in any overshadowing or loss of light to that property. Where there are side windows proposed in the building, the development or the application was revised to include some privacy screenings to the small balconies proposed on the side elevations to prevent any direct overlooking of the adjoining properties. In terms of properties to the north, you've got the roadway in between and a distance of about 30, I think it's 30 meters. No, sorry, where's it gone? 23 meters, which again is a good distance and prevents any significant issues of overlooking. As regards properties to the south, you've got the existing line of plane trees, partially screen a view of the building, and there would be a distance of 30 meters between the proposed building and the properties in Clayburn's side to the south. And with regard to the closer building at 14 Clayburn's Circle itself, that side's onto the property, and there's about 20 meters between, so they're all quite good separation distances in that respect. As regards the existing properties to the east, the building will be much closer than that of the existing structure, and they will have some impact. However, again, it sides onto those buildings, and there would be around about 19 meters separation, and there's no windows proposed which will directly look into those adjoining properties. So it's not felt that the proposal will lead to any issues in terms of loss of light or overshadowing or loss of privacy to neighbouring properties. The next issue is the parking highway issues. As mentioned before, the parking is provided either in basement or adjoining the new access road, providing 19 spaces. This would be be below the normal requirement for a scheme of this size, which would normally expect around 38 spaces. However, the applicant has put forward a justification for the shortfall in the form of a transport statement, which includes a parking survey of the area carried out over a couple of nights last year, which was just before the application was submitted. This covers the area adjoining roads, Long Riding, Brownlow Bend, Clayburn's Circle, Fairlip Gardens and Hockley Road. And they've shown that whilst the adjoining Brownlow Bend and Clayburn's Circle are well used at night, there are spaces in the vicinity of the site which could take up any shortfall. Around 48 spaces in that immediate vicinity that could be available at any one time. So it's not felt that whilst there would be a shortfall, it would lead to any significant parking issues in the area. It should also be noted that the site is a very sustainable location, reasonable about a kilometre from Basildon Town Centre, adjacent to a very good bus service, the number 8A, which runs every 10 minutes along this road, linking the site to Pitsea, Basildon and Town Centres, and so it's considered to be a very sustainable location, and therefore any shortfall in parking couldn't be warranted in this case. In terms of the visual impact of the parking areas, let's say it's in the majority of spaces are in the basement, and therefore have limited visual impact. It's also be noted that the Highway Authority have not raised any objection to the proposal as it stands, or the shortfall of parking, although they have requested some improvements to local bus stops in the area, provision of travel information packs for proposed occupiers, as well as a potential traffic regulation order to ensure there's parking is restricted in the appropriate locations. These matters would be secured by way of a Section 106 agreement. They've also don't feel that the proposal will lead to any significant increase in traffic movements in the area. As in terms of other matters, so what we call social infrastructure and ecology matters, the first matter is the provision of affordable housing on the site. Would normally look to see a scheme of this size provide 31% affordable housing. However, the applicants had originally proposed 4 units that would fall well below the requirement, and they were asked to provide a financial viability appraisal for the site. This actually was submitted, and it showed that the development couldn't afford to make a contribution towards affordable housing, and it was independently reviewed on behalf of the council by consultants, and they have concluded that the report is correct and that couldn't support such provision on site. However, we have been able to, following negotiations, seek an offer from the applicants of 30,000 towards off-site provision. This payment being due on sale of the 15th flat within the development, and we're subject to an upward only early and late stage review mechanism. It's felt that such an offer is reasonable in this particular case. So in terms of health facilities, the NHS Mid and South Essex STP are requiring a contribution towards improvements to the local health facility in Cahill Road, and they're looking at contribution of £7,600, which the applicants have stated they're willing to provide. Ecology issues, say there's the recreational management strategy, which are probably quite familiar now. The applicants have accepted that they will be willing to contribute £2,511 towards that aspect, and say all other issues have not resulted in any concerns. In terms of the neighbour comments, we had received 4 objections from the 48 neighbours that be consulted, and they had raised concerns about parking, overlooking noise and disturbance during the construction phase, as well as several other aspects. As I say, overall, I feel that the scheme would make good use of this underused site, providing say 20 new housing units. Has been designed to ensure it doesn't create any impact on neighbouring properties, is of a high quality, and subject to the applicant completing a section 106 covering the various contributions and requirements set out on pages 2 and 3, has been recommended for approval to the committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Moving forward, councillors, do any of you have points of clarification on questions you weren't able to ask at the technical briefing?
Yes, I think I do.
Could you raise your hand so I can see?
I was waiting for the screen to be unshared.
Yes, so thank you. I'll come to Councillor Rimmer, thank you. I'll come to Councillor Turner first, because he wasn't able to be at the technical briefing, so I'll give him the first.
I'm not joining the technical briefing, so no problem there. Just point of clarification, I'm looking at this and I can count 4 stories. You said in your opening remarks it was 3. What is it?
I said 4 stories.
It's 4, is it?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'll come now to Councillor Rimmer. Have you got points of clarification that you haven't previously been able to ask?
I do, but I think the rules haven't changed yet, as you made clear in the technical briefing we had on Monday. I will ask that question.
Councillor Rimmer, it's at the discretion of the chair whether you get to ask questions. I'm asking you so we can have a speedy meeting that you ask questions that you haven't already had the opportunity to ask. We don't need to repeat the same questions we asked last night. Thank you.
It's not my intention. I'm just reflecting what you commented, the comments that you made yesterday in the technical briefing, just for the clarity of people watching, what the democratic process is currently before it's curtailed in January. In respect of the financial viability study on the affordable housing, obviously we've got the council's assessment of it, but has this been published anywhere? Because my memory is that we committed to actually making this, to publishing these and making these available for the public, and that this was something that we had decided as a council to do. And I'm just really concerned about this, And that's why I'm asking this question, because 30,000, the more I think about it, and also ruminating on a lot of the discussion that happened yesterday, seems like a paltry amount when there's 20 apartments that are going to be sold here.
Yeah, can I? Oh. Shall I answer that?
David, we didn't hear
Yeah.
you. You were muted while you
No,
were speaking. Could you speak
Councillor
up,
Brown was
please?
muted. Yeah, Councillor Brown was muted. Yeah, the report is actually on the website, so it's available for anybody to view should they wish to.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, can I ask, obviously, in terms of the upscaling on the 30,000, because I don't think we went into too much detail on that. Could you outline any potential sort of parameters for that? Because it's the first payment of 30,000 is obviously happening on the 15 flat, and on that basis, are we going to look at how profitable it's been after 15 flats, or do we have the scope after all 20 flats have been sold to look at the upscaling?
Yeah, that would be part of the 106 agreement. Actually, the stages at the reviews, it may well be at the start of the scheme, whenever they may be, because sometimes they will start straight away. The first review wouldn't be necessary because they've already had their current assessment or be up to date. But if they started, say, in 3 years' time, the economy may have hopefully boomed, and therefore the value of the site might be more, the value of the units, and therefore we could have a different requirement at that stage. So it all depends actually when they start the work where the triggers come in, but that will be set out as part of the 106 agreement itself.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Yeah, if I may just follow on from Councillor Turner mentioning that there's actually 4 stories. Could we just have a breakdown of how many are in each story that make up the 20 flats, please, for one point? And the other is not for today, but we get a lot of these where financial contributions go to off-site affordable housing and money goes towards the health improvements. Would it be possible for us in the future, not too distant, meeting to perhaps have a breakdown of how these monies are being spent?
So in terms of the flats on each floor, it's 4 on the ground floor, 6 on the first, 6 on the second, and 4 on the third floor.
Thank you.
In terms of, say, the 106 agreement, I believe there is a report that goes to one of the committees, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, which looks at where all the monies are spent and how much is remaining and the various other issues that may result for the items.
Councillor Morris, that went to SPY committee, and we looked at the 106 agreement. 106 obligations were at SPY committee last month. Councillor Turner and Councillor Rimmer were at that meeting.
All right. Well, so long as it is being looked at, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wishing to ask questions have not had an opportunity to? Okay, with that, I'll open it up to if any councillors wish to make a comment before we take it to the vote.
We've got a member of the
Turner.
public, sorry, Councillor Brown.
Sorry.
We've got a member of the public wishing to address the committee.
Yeah, and I've got a neighbour's letter to read out as well.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I've moved on. Yeah, sorry, would you like to, so, yes, member of the public first, Kemi, yes?
David would usually read his written report first, then I'll let the member of the public in then.
Okay, yeah, do you want to do that then, David? Thank you.
Okay, right. Yes, it's from Marta Zadell of Long Riding. So I say she's got, I would like to dispute adequacy of the Long Riding Transport Statement, Parking Survey Transport Statement 2.17. This claims that the surveys were undertaken in accordance with the Lambeth methodology. I strongly believe that the presented data is inadequate inadequate, misleading, and not follows the principles of the Lambeth methodology. I'm deeply convinced that measurements and calculations provided do not follow Lambeth methodology recommendations too. Calculations presented in parking surveys suggest that parking lengths included in its transport statement cover yellow lines, restricted parking zones, low curbs, which is against the Lambeth methodology recommendations, therefore overestimates the available parking length. Common sense would suggest that in narrow roads, cars can only be parked on one side of the road. Calculations presented in the transport statement suggest that both sides of roads have been included for final estimation of available parking length. There's no photographs provided to support the parking survey, and in my opinion, photographs would provide evidence that the information provided in the survey is misleading. Accordingly, the plan application for the proposed blocks, which includes car parking of around 20 spaces, one for each of the flats. In a modern society, more and more households own 2 cars. According to the RSC Foundation survey, household car ownership in 2008 rose to 1.5. Households do not distinguish between flats or houses. In current economic climate, not many single people can afford buying a property by their own. Flats is no exception. We can assume that at least 10 additional parking spaces on the roads will be necessary to accommodate the cars from the proposed blocks. These cars will park on side roads, taking possibly the parking spaces for local residents, especially 27928 long riding. The existing car park is being used by local residents for when they're not used for church gatherings. There's approximately 11 other cars parked on that site currently. Recently, has been changes to parking restrictions long riding, from no waiting on Monday to Saturdays to no waiting at any time. This has implications on the available parking spaces for local residents and adds to parking stress in the area. This will only be made worse by the proposed block. With very limited parking spaces surrounding 301 long riding, we have significant implications on traffic congestion, vehicles accessing the building site, and workers' vehicles would have a negative impact on parking for local residents. It has not taken into account the impact of environmental pollution on neighbourhood, with the site being less than 20 metres from the nearest existing properties. Distance between the block 279298 long riding and the new block would be approximately 20 metres. Based on recommendations on space around dwellings, one or both facing dwellings where over 2 stories, the distance between principal windows should be 21 metres plus, an additional 3 metres for each additional story. Distance between the buildings should be around 30 metres to fulfil this after completions of works. Long riding neighbourhood is already under tremendous stress caused by parking limitations, drugs and vandalism. Needs of housing should not put current communities into caged rat situation where council trades doubtful building permission for few social housing premises. That's the completed letter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting in order for us to allow members of the public to come in and for Mr. Thorpe to come in. Kemley, is he waiting to come in?
Yes, he's joining us now. He's connecting.
Excellent.
Mr. Thorpe?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And you have 3 minutes.
Before I start, could I just clarify? Sorry, I'm one of the agents for the application, and we registered to speak really as a precaution, but has anybody else registered to speak, or is it still just us?
It's just you here to speak.
Okay, thank you. I think in that case, perhaps it would be more helpful to the committee if we forego that opportunity, save everybody a little bit of time, but would be more than happy to help with any queries that members or officers may have, if that would help.
Mr. Thorpe, I think it's just important that it's clear that the committee will not be able to ask you questions. That the only opportunity you have to address us would be in this 3 minutes.
Okay, got you. Okay, well, in that case, if I could then take advantage of those 3 minutes just to reiterate a few of the key points from the case officer's report.
Thank you.
Yeah, your timer is on already.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. My name is Simon Thorpe. I'm an associate at Rivington Street Studio, and we're the architect for this application. As a new town, Basildon provides an architectural context, which is something of a special case when compared to other nearby towns in Essex. And the Long Riding provides a particular context within the town. It features a long ribbon of residential development, which is coherent in form, composed of 3-storey terraced townhouses and flatted blocks. These existing buildings are characterful with features particular to their time, including visible frame construction, flat roofs, horizontal emphasis to windows, projecting balconies, and early examples of curtain walling. The neighbourhood is predominantly residential, with the application site and 3 small shop units adjacent being the only commercial uses in the area. The neighbourhood is also quiet, although within walking distance of Basildon town centre. In its current form, the site is certainly underutilised and detracts from the visual quality of its surroundings. Our application seeks to reinforce the existing residential character of the neighbourhood and to activate the site and the street corner by providing a development of new homes with high quality frontage and new landscaping. The design picks up on key characteristics of the surrounding buildings, while also being characterful and clearly of its own time. The elevations of the building are deliberately given a neutral treatment, with only the generous balconies emphasised and providing animation to the building. The design includes a number of features which will ensure the proposed new homes will be of high quality. Wide frontage, shallow plans with generous full height windows will ensure ample daylighting. Most of the new homes will face into a new garden to the rear of the site, which is south facing. The walled garden will provide a secure environment for children's play, well overlooked by homes in the development. And parking will be accommodated in a secure underground garage, so the development is not car dominated at street level.
You have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you. One lovely feature of the site is the existing mature plane trees. These are an important part of our design, providing both a visual screen and a backdrop to the flats facing into the garden. We believe that new development of this quality in Long Riding will have a positive effect on the neighbourhood and help provide much needed new housing in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. And we don't have any other members of the public, I believe, Kemi, so I'll re-adjourn the meeting and give councillors the opportunity to speak. Sorry, Kemi, I didn't catch that.
Yes, we can continue.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, Councillor Turner was first with his hand up last time, so I'll come to Councillor Turner first.
Thank you. I have to say, on a positive side, the redevelopment of this site is long overdue. I mean, even when I think the pub was in full use, not many people liked it, and it was a bit of an eyesore in that area. Being at sort of the top of Long Riding, or if you like to say it, in the middle of Long Riding, it wasn't the best iconic space that you could see. Having said that, I think the other positive is the design of the building. I mean, bear in mind, it's completely out of character with that area. But the actual design, I agree with the agent, has a real uplifting effect. It looks quite iconic itself, which is good. But that's where I leave all the positives, because I think they stop there. I mean, I can't again share this rosy picture that our officers paint. It's like, what's the problem? Yeah, there's no issues here. Coming back to the real world, if anybody knows that area and wants to drive around it, I don't know when that survey was taken, but it must have been about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There was an interesting picture there that was shown of some of the roads, and they're absolutely empty. Well, drive around there when everybody's indoors and have a look at the parking provision. And what you'll find is that parking is at a premium, even 200 metres away. You can quite easily find yourselves almost at Stacey's corner trying to find a parking space. And I'm not joking. So when you put all this stuff together and you look at, first of all, the bulk and density, the 4 stories, completely out of keeping, is at least 1 story too high. The parking provision, we shouldn't be backing off of this. I mean, even if you was to say, well, 1 space per dwelling, it wouldn't be enough. And what it actually means to not only the settled community, but the people buying these flats is nothing but misery. That's what you're peddling here. You're peddling misery, because whether you're a settled member of the settled community, a resident currently in one of those roads, or whether you're going to buy one of those flats, what's going to end up happening is you're going to be up against each other, causing nuisance. You'll have your car damaged, I'm pretty sure, in that area. People don't like you taking space outside their front of their house. So then you come to the provision of affordability. And we're actually backing off from charging a developer the right amount of money for don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm quite happy to take the cash, but let's have a reasonable sum of money so we can put it into housing provision. We shouldn't be accepting 30,000 from a developer that's going to walk away from quite a nice profit here. So all in all, I think we've gone far too far in compromising our values and our standards here. And as I say, with respect to Mr. Gill, nothing about this is rosy. And how you can portray this as being all okay, everything's right in the world, God only knows. For me, I can't vote for this. Dominating the street scene, overdevelopment, overbearing, damage to the visual amenity, the overlooking, that will be there. You can't get away from that. Parking provision, it hits pretty much every box and ticks every box on why we shouldn't be voting for this, and we should be sending it back and demanding a second go. But I think if you do want to vote for it, people in that area are not going to be happy, and the way of life, the quality of life, it's just going to be a misery for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'm next coming to Councillor Carol Morris. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I did have my hand up when you went to Councillor Turner first.
You're muted.
Councillor Brown, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Councillor Rimmer, I'm aware you have your hand up. You're on my list. Councillor Carol Morris has also had her hand up. I'm coming to Councillor Morris first. Thank you, Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I'm thinking much along the same lines as Councillor Turner's just outlined. On page 5, it talks about the block is to contain 20 flats, 7 1-bed, 10 2-bed and 4 3-bed, which is actually 21. I believe it should be 7 1-bed, 9 2-bed and 4 3-bed, which means that it needs a few less parking spaces than it actually says. It still, however, needs 34 parking spaces according to our parking standards, and it's providing half that number. There may or may not be parking available in the surrounding streets. The member of the public who wrote in doesn't think they are there, but even so, they should be available for other people. They're not deliberately making even less parking space for the rest of the residents. That's not very neighbourly. With regards to the balconies overlooking a rather busy road, with a lot of car fumes blowing up at them. Not the best of places to sit out, and there's very little space at the back. And the sort of a year we've just had where people actually welcome their own bit of outdoor space, and we're advocating somewhere where they're not going to get that. So, you know, there are a number of issues there that I'm not particularly happy about, and feel that, you know, there should be more parking space, there should be more amenity space per flat. And I'm not going to say that I disagree with anything else that Councillor Turner had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. In respect to this, I'm really disappointed in the planning department, because I asked a straightforward question as a clarification on whether the financial viability study and whether our appraisal had actually been published. In the meantime, I checked out our portal, our planning portal, and both documents have been redacted. And I think that does not show the the answer to the question was incorrect, and B, we're not actually having the transparency that we promised that we'd be doing. And I haven't had these documents either. So there's this ridiculously low figure of £30,000 that's being brought to us as acceptable for a payment in terms of affordable housing. And it just doesn't square with me at all. And I can't possibly vote for this on this basis. There are quite a few questions that have actually been raised in terms of bulk and density. But it's not acceptable anymore. We need to see that decision making. We need to see the justification for not meeting our policy on affordable housing. We need to see the appraisal of why we think that is actually acceptable or not. At the moment, we've got a few sentences in a report, and there's no transparency with the public. So I echo all the points my fellow councillors have already made in respect to parking, in respect to the bulk and density as well. I'm also disappointed that not enough cycling provision has actually been given in terms of cycle spaces. The remark in the report is that because they will be low car ownership, they'll be more likely to bike around. But we've actually given the same cycle provision, except with standard, as if there were full car parking spaces, but there aren't. So that mitigation is sort of undermined, really, by the fact that the bicycle places, parking spaces, have not been increased. So it's just not a great application at the moment, unfortunately. I also like the design. I also like the ambition behind it and what it's looking to do. The landscaping looks great, but there's too many flaws for me.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. I'm just going to ask Ms Lyons to come back in and just again remind us of the viability study, what our policy actually is and why some information is redacted and how long it's been on the website for any councillor at any time to have looked at. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to back in. I've looked on the website. The title of the document is redacted, but actually, if you look on the look at the document, it's actually all there. It's just the title of like a drawing description. It just says redacted. So it's been checked. It's all available for anybody to view anytime.
Exactly. But Councillor, can you just remind us what the policy is that we've voted on before? That is always goes to the website so that councillors can look at it at any time, and it is on us if we want to see that viability study to be able to go and read it. For no matter what councillor we are, what member of the public, it's not something that's individually sent to members of this committee. Could you just comment on that, please, Christine? Thank you.
The documents are required technically nationally now to be uploaded, so it's no longer a local matter. So they should be there. redaction is only matters of personal information. So I don't know what's been redacted off that document, but if it's only personal information, that's all we can actually redact off it. So no, we've got a policy now. I mean, generally planning services across the country have got a policy now of being completely transparent over viability. The viability challenges we have got is the fact that they go through a process, and we have brought back in, which we've never used before, Councillor Rimmer, is that we now do the review mechanism, and they've only recently brought in. They weren't carried out by Basildon previously. I've used them at previous authorities, and they're very successful. And the review is at 2 stages. It's at the early stage and the late stage review. And it basically allows us to reassess once the properties start to move forward for sale, whether or not the viability assessment was correct. And normally it's around the value of the properties when they're actually sold. At the moment, we're having viability challenges for lots of applications because of the fact that we're in a market at the moment where there's lots of unknowns. We are going through similar issues with all our new applications on affordable housing. So all I can say is the fact that we will look very carefully at the 2 reviews when they come forward, and I expect that we'll get an increased affordable housing offer.
Thank you, Christine. And obviously our officers work very hard to ensure that does happen. Any other councillor wishing to comment at this time? Councillor Rimmer, is this? Oh, Councillor, I'm going to bring Councillor Kettle because she's not an opportunity to speak, Councillor Rimmer. Councillor Kettle.
Yes, it is a question within the, I've seen the plans you put on the slide, which I find is really looking good, and long riding does need to be spruced up. I've seen it, I moved down here in 72 and I've seen it, and I've seen how it is now. It does need sprucing. Is there, you just clarified that they will be sold off, right? Now, is that individuals going to buy them, or is there a way that we can maybe stop private landlords from buying up all the 20 flats, charging astronomical rents, and just letting them out to anybody?
I wish there was, Councillor Kettle. That's one of my biggest, is that we're not allowed to do, we can't restrict the sale of properties to buy to let people. No.
Oh, well, that does answer my question, because as I said, I've seen long riding as it was when I moved down here in 72 to what it's become now, with the crime rate and everything else. So that was my one question that I wanted to ask this meeting, and I think you've answered it. Thank you very much.
And before I bring back in councillors who've already spoken or indicating to speak again, does any councillor who's not spoken? Yeah,
Councillor Foster's hand is up.
Yeah, just Councillor Foster, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just a brief thing. I mean, they state in there that it's about 1 kilometre to the town centre, and then go on to say 200 metres is a 2-minute walk. That's just a few words out of a paragraph. In fact, if you've had anything to do with these assessments, that goes on to say it's a 2-minute walk for a fit young male. In fact, a middle-aged person or a young lady, a male, from that point on, it gets progressively worse. So really, they're just quoting the one bit that suits there. For everybody else, that 2-minute walk does not exist. And that's also under good conditions, not sheet and ice in the winter. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Turner and Councillor Rimmer both indicating. So I'll come to Councillor Turner first. Thank you.
Even though I indicated first, Chair.
I'm coming to Councillor Turner first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
I've noticed your gains, Chair, and I will take note.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask a favour on material considerations such as size of the dwellings? I might have missed it, so apologies if I had, but I don't think it's in the report. Can we have that sort of information in the report, as it is pertinent to the application?
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer, thank you.
Thank you. Looking at the viability report and the assessment of the viability report, there is a lot of blank information in there. So how are we as councillors, or how are members of the public supposed to know what's been redacted and what was never in there in the first place? I think as councillors, we could easily have this information in a green paper, and actually be able to assess it that way as a non-redacted copy. At the moment, we're left with gaps. And I think that's something that needs to be reflected upon. It needs to be reflected upon in terms of the policy and the intent behind the policy.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just remind the committee again what Ms Lyons has already said to us. The only thing that they're legally allowed to redact is personal information, your names, addresses, that kind of thing. If councillors wanted to see that viability report, it's been on the website. You could have looked at it at any time, Councillor Rimmer. I think that point has been made. Any other councillor wishing?
I think my point was valid, thank you very much, and I was addressed to officers. But you know, you are trying to redact councillors now as well, aren't you?
Ms Lyons, do you want to come back in? Thank you.
Councillor Rimmer, I mean, I will just double check, because they shouldn't be redacted, and if they are, if we have redacted information, then there is an issue with that. However, if you brought it to my attention before,
there isn't anything redacted on any of the reports. I've looked at them now. Okay, I don't know what reports he's looking at.
And Councillor Rimmer would know that if he'd come to the meeting prepared, knowing he wanted to see a viability report.
Sorry, talking about my preparation level, when I'm actually talking about what's on the planning portal, where it says the reports have been redacted and there are gaps. If you're not prepared to prepare for the meeting, that's your problem. But don't accuse other councillors of that, Chairperson.
Thank you.
And sorry, Councillor Brown, Councillor Turner, the point you made about the space standards is actually picked up in the report.
Okay.
There's at page 13 of the agenda. It's a standard of accommodation. It says the dwellings have been designed to record the minimum space standards required under the Technical Housing Standard National Prescribed Space Standards, with units having a gross internal floor area between 50 and 55 square metres for 1 bedroom, and 60 and 61 for 2, and 86 metres for 3 bedroom units. Units themselves will also benefit from adequate layouts, room sizes, levels of lighting, outlook and privacy. So that was dealt with at
Super.
Point. Yeah, so they do meet the National Space Standards.
Thank you. I thought I'd seen it and then convinced myself I hadn't, but appreciate that.
I thought I'd seen it as well. I just thought I'd just double check.
Can I just say, Chairman, trying to take the sting out of all this. I mean, what we're trying to do here is we're all trying to get as much information as possible. And picking up on Councillor Rimmer's point, it would help if we could have timely reports, all the information. And I say timely reports, I'm not criticising officers for the Royal Mail. But, you know, I get this report, if I'm lucky, a day before. This one actually came a little bit earlier. But if we could have all the papers, then it does give us a period of time where we can cogitate and go over this stuff, because it isn't always clear. I'm sure officers do their best, but having that information, I don't particularly want to look on the website. My eyes are not that good, and I'm getting old. Believe it or not.
Thank you, Councillor. I think this week we've all had issues trying to get our reports to us on time. But point noted. But I would say, you know, obviously I'm with you. I'm not really into looking on the portal, but obviously at the moment with the problems we're having with the mail, that is often our only way forward, sadly. Any other councillor wishing to comment on this proposal? Now, one thing I would say is obviously it's not great on parking. There are parking issues in that area. However, as the report has been done, as highways have raised no issues, as it is considered a sustainable location, refusing this on parking issues would not get us anywhere. And I think that needs to be remembered and noted, that we have to follow the regulations that we're given through the NPPF, and we do not get to determine those rules. What we do have to do, though, is apply them fairly and constructively to every application that comes before us. and that this is considered a sustainable location, and therefore to refuse this on parking alone would be difficult. With that, I'd like to take it to the vote. I'd vote in favour of the recommendation. With that, I'll come to Councillor McGeorge.
In favour.
Councillor Derrick.
In favour.
Councillor Morris.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, this isn't sustainable. Definitely against.
Councillor Rimmer.
Against.
Councillor Kettle.
For.
Thank you. And with that, planning permission is granted. We'll now move on to item agenda 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First slide, please, Ellie. The proposal relates to an application for planning permission to use an agricultural field on the western side of Noak Hill Road in Langdon as an enclosed field for dog walking. The use would provide hourly sessions for members of the public and local residents to walk and exercise their dogs in an enclosed field that also complements as a hay meadow field. It would be part of the Watch House Farm Diversification Enterprises. The site is located within the Greenbelt and is before members as it technically constitutes a major planning application on site area purposes. The applicant has advised that the customers would use an online booking system to book hourly dog walking sessions in the enclosed field, which would be restricted to one person with a maximum of 3 dogs at any one time. The field would be unsurfaced and the ground would remain cropped to grass. It would operate during daytime hours, 8 AM until 6 PM Monday to Sunday, reducing to 8 AM until 4 PM in winter months. 5 sessions a week would be kept available for disabled dog owners or community-based sessions. The application would include a hard surfaced car parking area of approximately 36 square metres adjacent to the existing access from Dunton Road to the south, which would provide parking for 2 vehicles and would be overseeded with grass. The entrance would have a 5-bar field gate. A dog waste bin would also be provided, which would be managed by the applicants. With the next slide, please. Agricultural fencing comprising of square steel wire on timber posts to a height of 1.8 metres would be sited as a perimeter fence. This would replace existing fencing, which to the east and west boundaries is in poor condition. If members are minded to grant planning permission, it is recommended that an additional condition is attached requiring details of the hard surfacing and also requiring the removal of the hard surfacing if the use ever ceases. Next slide, please. No objections have been received from statutory consultees. 2 neighbour comments were received raising objections on noise and disturbance and loss of privacy grounds. Next slide, please. In order to protect neighbouring properties and minimise noise impacts, a condition is recommended to ensure that no more than 3 dogs can use the dog exercise field at any one time and to prevent dog shows, events or competitions taking place. This is in line with the details in the application and is considered reasonable in this location adjacent to residential properties. The hours of use would also be restricted to daylight hours as no lighting is proposed. Next slide, please. The NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, allows changes of use of land for outdoor recreation where the use preserves openness and does not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. In this case, the land would be maintained as a cropped wildflower hay meadow whilst being made available to be booked and used by members of the public and local residents for dog walking on a limited basis. The use would maintain the openness of the greenbelt and would enable the farm to diversify. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions on pages 43 and 44 of the agenda pack, together with an additional condition requiring hard surfacing details and also requiring the removal of the hard surface if the use were to cease. Thank you.
Thank you. Any councillors requiring questions that they've not a chance to ask? Councillor Morris.
Yeah, I don't think it was actually mentioned at the briefing that there's going to be a 5-bar gate across the entrance to the car park. Whilst someone is opening or shutting that gate, will there be somewhere for the car to park off the road?
That's a good question. Ellie, could we just go back to the site plan, please? Okay, it's slightly unclear on that. What I would say is we have got a condition, number 7, which requires the gates to be inward opening only and set back a minimum of 6 meters from the edge of the highway. So a vehicle would be able to pull on off of the highway to open the gate.
Okay, that covers that one then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other points of clarification? Councillor Turner?
Yeah, I just want this absolutely clarity on this. The hard standing gets removed and the designation reverts to Greenbelt.
The site will always be in the green belt, yes, and so the condition, if the use were to cease, then the condition would require that hard standing to be removed. But irrespective, that the site remains in the green belt.
Okay, thank you.
Any other points of clarification? No, I will therefore open it up. As we don't have any members of the public wishing to speak, I'll open it up to councillors at this point to see if anyone has any comments to be made. Councillor Rimmer.
Just to say, the conditions that have been put in by the officers are very sensible. It seems like a good use of the land. We checked with them whether there was any rights of way for ramblers. They've assured us that there isn't. It seems quite decadent for somebody to book an hour's isolated walk with their dogs around a field. But in these days, why not have that little bit of decadence for you and your dog? So yes, I'll vote for this.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Turner.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused with this, I'll be honest with you, because as Councillor Rimmer said, it does seem decadent, particularly as if you look just to the west of that site, there's a small, call it brook, stream, waterway, and normally the locals will walk their dogs along that path, and this isn't included in the site, so that is still going to be available to them. And I wonder who the hell is going to book a slot to come and walk on it when you've got things like, in Billericay, you've got parks there, you've got a lovely park in Gloucester Park, they're all available access. And I just can't understand why we would be turning this over to a dog walker's domain. It just, for me, I'm not computing it, but there you go. Thank you.
I've got Councillor McGeorge and then Councillor Morris. Councillor McGeorge.
Thank you very much. It's not decadent for some of us, and I will say I'm one of them. It's a necessity. I've got a dog that doesn't come back because she gets excited, and there aren't any places around here that I can let her run, because if she sees another dog, she's off. So actually you'll find there are a lot of us that would like an enclosed space that we can let our dog run free, and we haven't got to worry about anything happening to it. So I think you'll find there's actually quite a few people that will use this.
Councillor Morris.
Yeah, I think an answer to Councillor Turner might be that people who want to isolate might want to use it so they don't come in contact with anybody else and catch the COVID disease. But what I was going to say with regards to planning, it is, as we've been told, the land will remain in the green belt and it will be being used for leisure purposes, which greenbelt land is allowed to be used for. So I see no reason why we should not pass this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I'd just remind councillors that obviously after we spoke to the officers, the condition that the hardcore had to be removed, because as we all know, we've had to pass planning applications here because of existing hardcore. I know it's only a small amount of hardcore in comparison to someone's home, but I think it's important that that is removed. I would also remind councillors that we're not here tonight to decide whether or not something is or is not a good business plan. We're here to decide whether or not this meets the standards that as laid out in the NPPF. I don't see any other councillors indicating, so with that I'll take it to the vote. I vote in favour. Councillor McGeorge.
In favour.
And Councillor Hearn.
In favour.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Morris.
In favour.
Councillor Rimmer.
In favour.
Councillor Kettle.
In favour.
And with that, planning permission has been granted subject to conditions as outlined in the report. We'll now move to item agenda 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Go to the first slide, Ellie. Right. So the site is located on the southern side of Paycock Road, immediately at the junction with Honeywood Road, which forms the western boundary and sits within an established employment area. The application seeks permission for a new general industrial building for Class B2 general industry, B8 storage and distribution, and E commercial business and service purposes, an associated service yard, parking, and 2 new vehicular access roads onto Paycock Road, and the removal of the existing Honeywood Road and Paycock Road vehicular accesses. In addition, an existing substation to the south of the site will be removed and replaced by a new substation located in the southwest corner of the site. The client is exploring the option of a larger single unit as opposed to the 6 smaller units which were granted permission in December 2019. It is thought that a larger single unit will achieve greater security in the global financial crisis by ensuring a larger, more reputable tenant can be attracted to the site, as opposed to the small units that may be harder to let in the current market. The proposed development would include 2 new vehicular accesses off Paycock Road, one serving the proposed car park and the other serving the proposed yard. The proposed access serving the car park would be approximately 26 metres from Honeywood Road. In terms of car parking, the proposal would provide 27 car parking spaces, incorporating 3 electric vehicle charging points and 2 blue badge spaces, along with 13 secure cycle spaces. Essex County Council as Highway Authority have raised no objections to the application. A replacement soft landscaping scheme is proposed to the boundary of the site, which includes 24 new trees of varying species along with hedges and shrubs. The proposed development seeks to control surface water discharge rates through the use of an attenuation tank, which will be located beneath the car parking area prior to discharge into the existing surface water sewer. Essex County Council, as lead local flood authority, have raised no objections on flooding and drainage grounds. The application would provide a new purpose-built industrial unit which would make beneficial use of the land and generate new employment opportunities. In conclusion, the application is recommended to members for approval, subject to the conditions identified at the end of the officer report on pages 58 to 65 of the agenda pack. And the current slide shows the difference between the previously approved scheme, which was approved in December 19, which is the red, and then the blue shaded is the new proposed scheme as a comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we might need to come back to that slide. Councillors, anyone got any points of clarification to ask? No, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Morris.
Prior to July 17, the use of the land was one large industrial building. We gave permission for the 2 blocks consisting of 6 units in all at the end of last year. And now a new application is coming in for 1 large block, which actually is larger than the original. But it seems that, it's an industrial site. Industrial buildings should be on it. We've already given permission for it to be redeveloped. I can't see any reason why we shouldn't approve this particular one. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Rimmer.
Yes, I echo what Councillor Morris said, Chair. I think it's the business clearly just wants the flexibility to either to change plans or to have both options on the table. It is industrial site. The previous plan was fine. This plan is fine. I think it's good actually that, as I've been saying before, that equalities considerations have been taken into account with all of the reports tonight. It's also good with this particular plan that the trees scheme, the replanting of the trees, is actually very sympathetic and to nature. So all in all, I think this just should be approved.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, with that, I'll take it to the vote. I vote in favour. Councillor McGeorge.
In favour.
Sorry, Councillor Deary.
In favour.
Councillor Turner.
In favour.
Councillor Morris.
In favour.
Councillor Rimmer.
In favour.
Councillor Kettle.
In favour.
And with that, I've been given planning permission as subjected to the conditions outlined in the report. Now move to item agenda 6, which is to exclude the public from public and press from.
I'm sorry. Agenda 6 is planning appeals and enforcement update.
I thought we were doing this first.
No, we do so that we could stop the recording and take it off live. So.
Okay, fine. Okay, we'll look at the enforcement. I'll hand over to Councillor Lyons. To Mrs. Lyons. Thank you.
Charles.
It's Charles.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So sorry. This report is just for members to note. So between 1st November and 30th November, the enforcement activity and planning appeals that we've received. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Okay, if you could, Councillor Turner.
Yeah. Mrs. Lyons knows I'm not happy with this enforcement thing, particularly on travellers. I just don't see it being transparent enough. I don't have any way of finding out what the latest status is, and it seems like we've had sites that have been occupied for months with no activity going on it. We need a better way to communicate what the status is on this land.
Councillor Turner, I have been requested by the deputy by Mandy Skeet to provide an update for members on a quarterly basis, which the first one will be the January committee, the 9th of January committee, well, an update on enforcement cases that we've got across the borough. That will look at all high, it will look at cases within where we've got enforcement is served and where they've got a significant interest in them. So there's quite a few that we've got that have been served notice against that are not just gypsy and traveller cases. That you need to be aware of. So that will be coming to committee on the 15th. No, 15th January, is it committee? Yeah, they'll be coming to you on that committee. So there's a report being put together for you at the moment.
Thank you. And can we have that in good time so that we do have a period where we can peruse that at our leisure?
Well, it'll be as part of the agenda, Councillor Turner.
Do we have to? Does the committee members actually have to wait for that? Because I think if you're pulling it together now, the earliest we can get it, the better.
Well, I mean, at the moment, I haven't got officer support to put that together at the moment. They're working on a number of other issues, but we'll get it. I mean, if it's ready any earlier, we will produce it in a draft form earlier than the agenda requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
With that, I believe we need to now take it to the vote, go to the vote for whether or not we're going to exclude the public before Councillor Lyons can update us on Whole Fields. I'm just going to take that straight to the vote. So if you'd like to unmute yourselves in preparation. I vote in favour. Councillor McGeorge.
In favour.
Councillor Adair.
In favour.
Councillor Morris.
Favour.
Councillor Rimmer.
Favour.
Councillor Turner.
In favour.
And Councillor Kettle.
In favour.
Thank you. With that, I will ask if the recording could be stopped.